Good morning and welcome everybody to today's webinar brought to you by AJ Recruitment and Turro. So today we are going to be discussing how to develop effective care leaders, and today we have with us Sophie Coulthard. So we're just going to go through a few things first and we can then obviously get into it with Sophie and she can explain to you all about the things that she wants to share with you today. So a little bit about myself. I'm Rachel Bryan. I'm one of the senior managers here at AJ Recruitment and Turro. And I've been here for 9 years and I am really passionate about sharing really helpful and useful content to managers and leaders within the social care sector. So we have a number of ways that we do this. We have blogs, we have webinars on a monthly basis. We have a group on LinkedIn whereby people can join, which is a protected space on LinkedIn. You can share, ask questions with other managers and read different content in there also. Just a few random facts. So we've got currently reading Fish Philosophy. So as a business, we choose a book and we read that in the business and then we share that with the teams and help introduce some of those strategies. Fish is an excellent book I would really recommend. If you want to sort of improve some of the culture within your team, I would really advise that you would read that book and see and get your team involved and see how they can implement those strategies. And it's all about introducing some fun at work and engaging your customers in what you do. Currently writing. So this week we are launching the Social Care Salary Survey 2018 report, which is a great report. We did it last year. It was really successful. So I'm really keen to continue to do that year on year. This year we had even more respondents and the wealth of information that came from that survey was brilliant, and it's really helping managers and leaders in the sector with their benchmarking for salaries. So just about who we are and what we do. So like I say, brought to you today by AJ Recruitment and Turro. So AJ Recruitment, we're a temporary frontline staffing solution specialist. And we concentrate around Yorkshire and the Humber, providing staffing solutions for different assignments such as emergency cover 24 hours a day, temporary contracts and assignments, fixed term contracts, temp to perm introductions and permanent placements. So if you need any assistance with anything like that, just give us a call. And Turro specialise in the executive level roles, so more complex roles. We help social care leaders with their recruitment and train them how to recruit their own care staff. We then help them with their more complex roles such as CEOs, directors, heads of service and operations, etc. So as I mentioned, the Social Care Salary Survey is out this week and you can use this as a really strong tool to help you when it comes to any new recruits that you may have in the business. So you can look at, what are your competitors paying in the market to make sure that you're as competitive as possible with pay rates, bonus structures, other salary packages. We also look at there in how people are feeling about their pay, bonuses that they've received, who's moving in the workforce in social care. So are people looking for new positions in what parts of the sector? So is it the private sector, the charity sector, or the public sector? And also, what are people looking for when they're looking for a new employer, when it comes to the choices that they're making when they're applying for jobs? What is it that they're looking for in the job adverts? And this will really help you make sure that you can write the most effective job adverts. So just a few of the quick stats in there. So the Social Salary Survey this year, like I said, did get more respondents than ever. And we had over 1,000 respondents from over 500 different social care organisations. We did, like I say, look at who was moving in the sector. So as you can see there, we've got private sector workers, 57% of those are looking to move within the next 12 months. So that's quite a big stat. And it's something to take seriously in the sense of looking at your current workforce, who's happy, who are you retaining, but then also who's out there in the job market. So when you're putting your job adverts out there, who can you aim towards attracting into your organisation? As you can see from the list on the side there, we concentrated on these different sort of level of roles within the sector. So we had directors and board level, regional directors, heads of services, multi-site managers, single site managers, right through to frontline care workers. So we got a real good mix of who answered the survey, who gave across their opinions and thoughts, and it's just, like I say, a really good tool. So we'll make sure that you all get a copy of that straight after this webinar today. So our guest speaker today, we've got Sophie Coulthard. So Sophie works with UK companies to work on their recruitment and their retention and help develop the right staff using her tool, the Judgement Index. So also, Sophie does host a podcast called The Road to Outstanding. Now, I've been listening to this podcast myself over the last couple of days, and I must say it is definitely worth tuning in and listening. She does some great interviews with people in the sector and some experts who can really share their knowledge, and you can get a lot from that. What I would say is I personally found podcasting difficult to fit in my schedule and thought, where can I fit into listening to these podcasts driving? I think when you're driving to and from work, listening to podcasts is a perfect opportunity. And also it's learning while you're on the move. So Sophie today is going to be sharing with you her knowledge and understanding about what makes outstanding rated managers different. Also exploring what situational leadership is, discovering the most unused management style in care, and also the simple strategies to implement a values-based culture. She will also be discussing today how to understand and spot the future stars in your organisation and how to nurture them into effective leaders in the future. So a few tips for today. One thing I would definitely recommend is take thorough notes. There's a lot of great information today that you can take away. So take thorough notes so that when you obviously you finish the webinar and you get back to your day-to-day operations, you have some clear actions that you can start to implement straight away. After the webinar's finished, you will be sent a survey. If you can complete that, we'd be really grateful. It's just a big help to us to help us in future attract the best speakers and experts in the sector to speak about topics that you want to know about and that you're interested in. That's my job, to make sure that I get those people in front of you to speak. So your opinions really matter on that survey. And then download the recording. So after this, we will send you the link to the recording so that you can then listen to this again in your own time, and also share it with your team. So if people weren't able to, attend today live on the webinar, ask them to watch it in their own time, and they'll take away a lot from that. So I'm going to hand you over to Sophie now, and Sophie's going to obviously get into the topic that she wants to speak about today. So thank you, Sophie, for today.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. And actually, I completely agree. The best time to listen to a podcast is always when you're traveling, when you're commuting somewhere. So I really recommend that. Give it a go. But yes, so today I'm going to talk about how to develop effective care leaders. I'm going to provide a lot of free resources during this webinar, so don't feel the need to kind of write everything down. If you're trying to catch some of these resources, they'll all come out to you at the end. So today, as Rachel mentioned, I'm going to try and fit in quite a lot, but I'm going to spend most of my time on the top part. So looking at this research that we did with outstanding care managers, and then obviously looking at situational leadership, which some of you may be familiar with, and some of you may be using situational leadership without even realizing that you're doing it. So I'm going to go into that and try and cover the rest of it as well. So let's see how we do. A little bit about me. So as Rachel mentioned, I am the principal consultant at Judgement Index in the UK. We actually work with clients from all different types of industries, but for myself, I work with our care clients, and that includes care homes, home care, services for people with learning disabilities, some hospitals and children's services too. And I work with them for a variety of things, helping them to improve their recruitment processes, develop and retain staff. And as Rachel mentioned, I do also host a podcast, which I'll mention a little bit later on. I thought I'd also share what I'm currently reading. I thought that was quite fun. I'm reading a book called Principles by Ray Dalio, which is looking about how he put principles into place within his company to shape the culture, it's really interesting. But my favourite is listening to podcasts. I find them, you can just get so much information while you're travelling around, and Work Life is a really interesting podcast. Sometimes I find when in the care sector, you look to other companies within the care sector to try and understand what good practice is and to get inspiration. And sometimes I think it's a good idea to look outside of the sector, look at other industries, look at other working environments, and try to take inspiration from there. And that is exactly what this podcast delivers. Adam interviews people from NASA, professional basketball teams, but manages to take things that they're doing within their organisations and make it accessible for people in different sorts of environments. So well worth a listen and pretty entertaining as well. So let's start then looking at what outstanding rated managers do that's different. So this has been taken from a study in 2017, which was done by Article Consulting and involved our sales judgment index as well. And I think it's fair to say there's a huge amount of focus on what outstanding homes or services do and how that they've achieved outstanding. But actually there's been a little bit less focus on the managers of these services, who they are, what they do that's different from other managers, and what is it about these managers as leaders that, despite the challenges that they face, their service has managed to achieve this outstanding rating. So as much as it is a team effort, and every single manager obviously always credits their team in achieving this rating, we did want to take a look at these leaders and see what the research would tell us. So this study took place in two parts. Part one was an online survey, and that sought to gather some background information about these managers themselves. So some of the facts which I'm going to share on the next slide. And part two was for them to take the Judgement Index assessment, which provided a unique look and insight into these individuals. And I'll explain a little bit more about that as well. So the findings through the initial survey with Article Consulting, some of this stuff you might have already read, you might already be aware of. The majority of outstanding managers were female. None of them had been in their post for less than a year, so they all had a fair bit of experience in their environment. Most were managing a single independent home, which was quite interesting. And the thing that I liked is that they all said that they felt like they had autonomy in managing their home, being able to sort of have that ownership over how they led their teams and set things up and manage processes within their environment. And whilst only half of them attributed their outstanding rating to their effective and consistent leadership, I think they're probably being a little bit shy here. And I think if we were to really look at these homes in great detail, we would see that the managers, the leaders of these homes played a huge part in creating this positive culture that then led to outstanding. Now, this research is all available, it's all free, it's available from Article Consulting website, but I'll also provide the links to that at the end for you as well so that you can get hold of the full copy. I'm just sharing some of the highlights here with you now. And the second part of this research was to look at the managers' Judgement Index results. So just to explain a little bit about what the Judgement Index is for anybody who's unfamiliar. So the Judgement Index assessment, it is an in-depth measurement of somebody's values-based behaviours, their capacity for good judgment. So slightly different from perhaps if anybody listening has taken a personality assessment before or taken something like Myers-Briggs perhaps for part of a job. What we're looking at is slightly different with this. So what I normally give people as an example is if you think about the best two leaders you've ever worked for or the best managers that you've ever worked with, they might have actually had quite different personalities. But what they probably had in common was the way that they valued people, the way that they made decisions, their judgment in certain scenarios, and that's what we're looking to measure here. So the assessment was created by a chap called Dr. Robert Hartman, who died in 1973. And obviously this research and the assessment's been continued. And he was Nobel Prize nominated for this work as well. The assessment is very simple, and that's what made it the ideal tool for this study. Because of its abstract nature, it meant that the participants were unaware of what was being measured or how it was being measured. And that was really what they were looking for in this research. We already have a lot of data on care companies, obviously working in care for quite a long time across the US and the UK. And the assessment is being used by organisations such as the Mayo Clinic, the Alabama Children's Hospital, which is a great hospital over in the States. So we already had a lot of data. We already knew what good looks like in a care environment. So now the question that was posed is, what does outstanding look like? And when we have a look at these behaviours on the next slide, I think one thing that's worth doing is having a reflect on yourself, and we'll come to that in a second. What can we learn from this research, and what can managers and leaders in a care environment take from these findings and actually start to put into their own lives? So this is what we found, and I'll explain a little bit about this. So the Judgement Index measures people's judgment capacity, let's say, in both a work environment, but also in their personal environment. So in their own lives, in their personal worlds. And what was really interesting was that 100% of these managers had a strong and balanced self side. This is quite rare. You see a lot of people who are very capable at work, and they can come into work and they can shut the door behind them, and they can leave whatever's going on in their own lives at home. And what was incredible is that these managers seem to have a very strong self side as well. The point underneath it, they showed balance between people skills, task skills, and strategic ability. So what we quite often see when we look at people's results in the Judgement Index is we look at we look at how they place consideration to people, how their people skills are, how their task skills are, and how good they are at thinking strategically, which is about thinking over the horizon, thinking about the benefits, thinking about the consequences of situations. Now, quite often, we'll often see that is the weaker score, but these managers were showing a really good balance between people, getting on with people, having empathy, understanding people, with task, actually getting the job done. And let's face it, in care, there is a huge volume of tasks that need to be done. But then that strategic ability as well, which was really interesting. My thoughts on this was looking at the fact that they had autonomy on their homes, quite often managing a single home. Is that something that they've been able to develop themselves, this strategic ability? And a lot of us probably work environments where we do have somebody above us who is doing that strategic thinking for us, which means we may not have to develop it ourselves. But this was really interesting for us to find. And clearly, with these outstanding managers, being able to see the bigger picture in their working world was a quality that was important. So underneath that one, 75% scored as extremely quick problem solvers. Now, with any group in any industry, we would only expect to see around about 15% score like this, what we call extremely quick problem solvers. And that's people's ability to come up with quality decisions at a rapid pace. Quite often people with this trait can leave other people behind because they're so quick at problem solving. Anybody listening now who finds themselves sort of drumming their fingers on the desk while they're in meetings because they're becoming frustrated that people can't keep up with them, this is what these managers will be seeing probably on a daily basis. It is quite striking that 75% of them scored in this extreme bracket, because it's far more than we would expect to see. And it just shows that, you know, with a lot on their plate, these managers are able to solve problems really, really quickly. Strong intuition skills, we would expect to see this in care, and our research has shown that people working in a care environment typically are a lot more intuitive than average population. They all showed strong stress coping mechanisms. And this is really interesting. We gave feedback to these managers following this research. And I'm always very wary to say to a care manager, oh, you're showing with no stress at work. They would laugh me out the door if I said that to them. What this is telling us is that despite any stress in work and in their own worlds, they all had good, strong coping mechanisms to be able to handle this stress and pressure that they're under. The one underneath it, they showed a slight susceptibility to burnout. Now, anyone with scores like this that we were seeing with these managers, really high motivation levels, strong work ethic, there is a possibility that burnout could be on the horizon. This was something that we wanted to highlight to them and make them aware of. And I know a lot of managers will achieve outstanding and then move on or take a break. And I did question them all and wonder if burnout was something that they were kind of leading themselves to a little bit. Now, 85% scored as strong as they possibly could for being able to follow directions, but this also includes sort of giving directions, being very precise, being very meticulous. And again, does that have something to do with them achieving that outstanding rating that they scored so well for this? And finally, they all fell within a healthy bracket for self-criticism. Now, I do have people argue with me sometimes and say that self-criticism can be good. It allows you to have high standards. But actually, when self-criticism gets to a point where it's not that healthy, where people are being too hard on themselves, that can quite often spill out into negativity onto others. And it can quite also mean that people don't celebrate their successes because they are so self-critical. So to see all of these managers falling within a healthy bracket for self-criticism was really positive and really nice to see. And then finally on this slide then, so as I mentioned, we do work with other industries. And if we were to sort of put all leaders from all industries into a big pot, these managers would have actually fallen within the top 10% of leaders. And that was probably the best thing that we found across the whole study, that these managers could sort of hold their own against leaders across all different industries. And as you can see from these scores, it does reflect that. But it was really positive and really good to see. So what can we actually learn from this research, and what would be worth having a think about for yourselves if you're leading? And whilst we are talking about care homes in this study, I think any service that you're leading, there are definitely things to have a little bit of a think about. So one question that I would ask myself as a care leader would be, how often do I actually look over the horizon? How do I consider the implications, the benefits, the consequences of things that are in place? And with these managers scoring so well on the strategic scale, then this would definitely be something that I'd consider. Is it worth tapping into your own strategic ability a little bit more? Do I have coping mechanisms in place for stress, both at work and at home? Can sometimes be a bit of a tricky one, especially when you're thinking about your own personal world. How does that actually affect you at work? But the fact is that it can creep in and it can end up affecting you at work if you don't have strong coping mechanisms and resilience in place. This is obviously something that we found within all of these managers. How do I celebrate mine and the team's successes? This is picking up on that self-criticism score. And if you were nodding your head when I was talking about self-criticism, then it is worth considering, if you're very, very tough on yourself, does that mean that you sometimes struggle to celebrate success? So that might be something worth having a little reflect on. And then finally, a bit more of a holistic thought now, how do I rest and recharge and give myself my own time? With burnout being quite common and a lot of people being susceptible to it in care, in your positions where you're putting so much into other people, looking after other people, leading your teams, how do you actually take that time out to rest and give yourself things outside of work to fulfill you? And I think that these are sort of the key points that I think anybody could sort of review and have a think about themselves, whether you've taken the Judgement Index or not. I think considering the strengths that this group showed, it's worth reflecting on these. If you have got development in these areas, then bear in mind that by working on these things, it can have a huge impact on how you lead your team. And that would obviously, hopefully, be too outstanding. So moving on from that research, one thing that I wanted to talk about, which I thought would be useful to share, would be to have a look at situational leadership. So what it is and how you can use it to get the best out of your team. And this is taken from a workshop that we run for care providers. We also run this workshop as part of our Leadership Academy, which we've run for different care companies across the UK. I was a little bit conscious. I shared this information at the care show back in October, and I was conscious of teaching people to suck eggs, of talking to people about something that they already knew about. But actually I got approached so much by people after that talk wanting more information that I thought it would be worth sharing here. And you may already know about this. You may already be familiar with situational leadership. But what we find is that 60% of new managers actually underperform because they're not given leadership training and leadership training just like this. So the one thing I would say when we start to get onto this and I start to describe what it is I sometimes get a little bit of pushback from people that feel like it's manipulative. It's manipulative to change your style and use different styles on different people. But if it delivers the results, then it is the right way. So bear that in mind when we go through this. And let's have a look a little bit about what situational leadership is. So if anybody is familiar with Daniel Goleman's work, he wrote a fantastic book about emotional intelligence, and he also came up with these leadership styles, different styles of leading a team. And what I'm going to make available for you at the end of today is a leadership styles questionnaire, which you can simply print, fill it in, and it will tell you what style you're using the most right now. And there's no right or wrong about this. It's about being able to use the right style at the right time. A lot of people feel very personal when they think about leading a team. They can sort of take it quite personally. And the most important thing to remember is it's not about you. It's about what you're trying to achieve, what the mission is, and what you want the result to be. And I always think that the leadership style should be determined by the people that you've got in front of you, their motivational level and their skill set, and also the crisis level as well. So I'll give you just a quick example. So if CQC or Ofsted were coming down the driveway and you can see them through the window, you may have to adopt a very commanding style, telling people what to do to make sure everybody's doing what they need to do. I would say it's probably a mini moment of crisis if you can see CQC coming down the drive. It's not a time for an affiliative approach. It's not time to sit down and have a debate and decide what you need to do. That's probably a time where you need to just go into tell mode and just tell everybody what they need to be doing. So yes, the leadership style can depend on the crisis level. Think about the people and the scenario that you're in, and also those people, think about their motivation level and their skill level. So let's have a look at these different styles. If you've been thinking, I think I might know what this is all about, then it might become clear now. So these are the different styles, and without going too much on each different one, and you will learn more about this if you download that questionnaire. So over to the left, we have a commanding style. This is the very tell. We've then got the pace setting style, which is similar, but it's a bit more do this by this time. So it's very, very common in care. We've got the visionary style, which is, if everybody remembers Martin Luther King, I have a dream. It's that setting the scene and guiding and having people go with you on that vision that you have. We have the democratic approach, which is very collaborative. Let's all discuss this. Sometimes people with this approach can have meetings for meetings for meetings. We have the affiliative approach, which is about putting people first. Quite often the affiliative leader can be part of the gang. And finally, we have the coaching style, which is all about developing people, asking, not telling, and helping people to uncover and discover the answer for themselves. So the most common styles are definitely the commanding and the pace setting, is what we found in care. And we quite often find as well with new leaders, and if I just show you this slide here, we've got the commanding style over on the left-hand side, which is very much the tell, do it this way. This is the way it must be done. This is my list that you need to go and do. And quite often new leaders, when they've newly been promoted, they can be quite uncomfortable with this new position that they've been given. And we've worked with a lot of new leaders in care that have said that they found this and they don't really know what to do. You might find that there'll be the person who will suddenly go into the sort of dictator style, that commanding style, and they think that that's going to be the best approach. Sometimes we do find that new leaders can be too affiliative. They still want to be part of the gang. They've just been promoted above all of their sort of friends and colleagues, and they're very conscious of stepping into that leadership role. So therefore they become really affiliative, and then they can get walked over as a result of that. So it's quite funny how this seems to pan out. But actually, the coaching style can really help new leaders. So we've got an example of the coaching style on the right-hand side. And that style can really help because it puts the emphasis back on the individual that they're talking to. It takes the pressure off that leader. And I'll talk about how you can do that soon, either for yourself or how you can help maybe your team leaders or seniors do that. If you're curious about your own leadership style, as I said, download and print the questionnaire, fill it out. It's also got a document with different explanations on it. You can take it for yourself, or you might want to run a workshop with your seniors and have them all fill it in. And there isn't a right or wrong. So it's important not to feel like you're being tested or that they're being tested. All it's doing is having a look at the style you use the most right now. Reflecting on that and then deciding whether that's the most appropriate style. So what you'll find is if a new leader has stepped into that commanding style and they are in a tell mode and they're telling everybody about what they should be doing, this is what you need to do, then that can be quite tricky, because if they're leading people who already know what they're doing, people with a lot of experience, then it can get a very negative reaction. And this is very often where people struggle. So let's have a look then a little bit more at this coaching style, why it's underutilized and how you can use it to get better results. So the reasons why people don't spend a lot of time on coaching, and I'm sure, if you're a manager listening now, or you're a leader, or you're in a director position, you probably have books about coaching sat around your office. You've probably been on training where you've been told to do more coaching, but people actually don't spend a lot of time coaching. And the reasons why are it takes longer. There's quite often time constraints, and let's face it, in care it's about getting things done and getting things done quickly sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And it's also very hard to have the patience to coach. Ultimately, if you know the answer to something, you may have this overriding desire to tell people and get very frustrated if you're trying to coach people. But coaching really, really allows you to develop the people around you. When you do that, it will help you empower them to take responsibility. You'll be able to sleep better at night knowing that you have a team that can handle everything. So if you can put some effort into this, I do guarantee that it will deliver some results for you. And the most important thing about using a coaching style is to ask, not tell. So I'm going to give you an example of an exercise that we do, that we put in place when we run this workshop. And we get people into pairs and we ask them to use coaching questions in a, let's say, feedback scenario. So we set this as a challenge, and we ask people that they are not, we let the people know participating that the leaders are not allowed to tell. They are only allowed to ask questions, and they find this so difficult. It's like playing the yes/no game. It's really, really hard to not say what you want to say. So think about, if you're giving feedback to somebody, maybe give this a try. So let's say somebody's I would say called in sick, but maybe they've let you down in some way. So something's happened, maybe they haven't turned up to do something that they said they would. So the important thing to do, first of all, is to get the explanation from them as to what happened by asking them what happened. By telling them, you're giving them your own perception of it. So it's really useful by asking the question, you get their own perception of what actually happened. And at this stage, you want to be getting the facts. Next, you want to understand what the emotional impact of what they did was. So the question, how do you think that makes me feel? So they've let you down, they've not turned up for something, they've told you what happened, they've said, oh, well, I didn't turn up, I don't know what they might have said, I couldn't be bothered, or something like that. How do you think that makes me feel? This is trying to get some emotional impact for them to now understand how their actions are affecting others within the group, maybe their colleagues, etc. The next thing that you need to find out from them is what needs to be done now. And the temptation is always to tell people what they need to do. But actually, if you get it from them, they'll have ownership and they will take responsibility for it. So what needs to happen now? Well, they'll probably give you an answer about what they need to go and change, who they need to apologize to. And then you need to understand from them the consequences if they don't do it and the benefits if they do. So what happens if you don't do it? Well, I'll probably be put on a warning. Okay, but what if you do it? Well, I think everyone will forgive me and I think I can make up for it and that will make me feel good. Fantastic. And so finally, what you need to do is just confirm what they're going to do. So just to summarize and confirm the action taking. So you can see from these questions, it's all really simple, but when you try to put it in practice, it can be really, really difficult. The reason why this works really well for new leaders when we work with people on this is because it is putting the ball into the court of the individual they're working with. It actually means that the leader doesn't have to tell off. The leader doesn't have to decide what happens next. The onus is all on the individual that they are giving the feedback to. And so it can be really powerful and it can really, really help new leaders if they can adopt a coaching style and they can get used to using it. Not only does it help them and take a little bit of pressure off them, but it's also helping the people that they're working with because they're taking responsibility. I hope that's all made sense and everybody's with me on that one. And so I think the key questions, and if you go and take this questionnaire yourself, and it literally takes 2 minutes, it's a couple of pages, you just have to put ticks in boxes and then add your scores up, is to consider what style you use the most, if you're using the right style for the scenario, and are there times where you could change your style depending on the person or the situation. And I think that's really, really key. Bear in mind that you do not have to have the same style of leadership for every single person in your team. Consider that if you have a capable team or perhaps a capable sub-team who have a lot of experience, using the command style will ultimately get you a negative reaction. With those types of people, you should probably switch to a more coaching style to help them feel empowered and valued. And also they'll feel like they're being developed and they'll probably stay longer within the company as well. If you have, let's say, a sub-team who are quite inexperienced, who maybe don't have great motivational levels, then that may be a time to adopt that command style because there's not going to be much room for error. You're going to really want to give it to them straight what you need them to do. So bear that in mind. This can be so powerful and so useful when you get into it, and understanding that you are able to bend and change your style as you need. So use it, go away and give it a go. And I'd love your feedback. So do let me know how you've got on with that one. So let's move on from that then. I've just talked about how that can help the staff feel valued, make them feel empowered. Let's take that a little bit deeper. So let's talk about how to implement a values-based culture. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this, but this is something that I have found when I talk to leaders, this is their top priority when they're leading a team, is to create this culture where it's based on their values. Now, the top thing to think about when we talk about values and culture is you may have values now on the wall of your company. They may be on your website, and they may be printed somewhere in let's say, an employee handbook. But are they actually reflected in the behaviours of the staff? So what we quite often find is that there is a disjoint there. There are values on the wall, but if you walk down the corridor, go and do it after this webinar. Walk down the corridor, grab somebody and say, hey, do you know what the values of this company are? If they know them, that's great. That's sort of ticking the box number one. The next thing I would ask is, and what does it mean to embody these values in this company? And that is the real key. And that is quite often where the disjoint is. So one thing that you can do as a leader, and I recommend giving this a go as maybe as a specific workshop or as part of a team meeting. It's nice to do it on its own and make it its own sort of special workshop, really, is to run something where you start to have a look at the company values and you start to develop them actually into full statements. Now, you can do this yourself. You can bring someone in from outside the company. This is the sort of workshop that we quite often facilitate, where you're having a look at the values and then you're having a look at what they actually mean. So by workshopping this with the team themselves, by asking them and getting their feedback of what this value of respect means or what this value of honesty means, it will actually generate a level of ownership from the team because, okay, they haven't been able to decide the values, but they can certainly help to decide what the culture statements around those values mean. It will help get everybody engaged. And then what actually can happen, and we've witnessed this happen with clients that we've worked with, is the staff will then become empowered later on down the line to challenge people. So, 2 weeks later, somebody's not living up to that value of respect. Another staff member can actually pick them up on it and say, well, hang on a sec, we all agreed these within this meeting. Why are you not behaving in accordance with our values and our culture statements? So it can be really, really powerful, and it can get this sort of self-leadership going on within your entire team. I would say don't stop there. Get some visual reinforcement across the home. Use these culture statements as part of your recruitment process. Use them within your interview questions. Use them within your onboarding so everybody knows how to embody the values and the culture of your organisation. Now, I'm going to stop on that one because I'm conscious of time and there's still a little bit left to do. But I actually did an entire podcast episode all about building values and culture, and it's about 45 minutes long. And I talk a bit about this in a bit more detail. And I also direct to some free resources there as well to help you actually start to do these workshops. So I'll provide you with the links to that, and feel free to go and have a listen if this is something you're interested in running with your team. And then probably my final point then, before we come to a close, is to have a little look at spotting future leaders. So just a few tips and tricks for you now. I know that you'll all work in different sized organisations. Some of you may be very conscious that you are going to have to bring people up and promote them. And how do you go about doing that? And how do you spot your future leaders? So one of the key things to understand, and what we found through our research, is that actually 90% of care managers started as a support worker or started in an on-the-ground type of position. And that means that so many don't enter a care environment with prior leadership knowledge or experience. So do bear in mind that skills can be taught. You may have people in your team who are bright, who are enthusiastic, who are motivated, that do not have the skills to be a leader right now. But that's definitely where I'd be putting my attention, upskilling the motivated, enthusiastic staff. Quite often you do see people get promoted just because they're experienced, and they might not have any of the other qualities that you're looking for in a leader. And that will quite often be when you feel, oh, I've made a bad decision here. So some of the key qualities to look out for, and some of the things that we often advise people as well. Look for the staff who've got that intuition, who are able to read body language, who are able to read the environment and adjust their behaviour accordingly if they need to. Intuition, you know, having that ability to have natural intuition around other people does make a great leader. And we find this consistently across all environments. Trainability. Is this somebody that you can easily train? Are they sort of quick off the mark? Then that would definitely be something that I'd be looking for. And somebody with self-assuredness. Now, I did Google this to make sure that it was a proper word, and apparently it is. But people who are pretty self-assured in themselves, people who have some confidence in themselves, they may not have confidence in their leadership abilities, and people who have kind of just got that vibe about them that people feel comfortable around them. Definitely through that outstanding manager research, this is one of the key qualities that we found in these managers, and it is a natural leadership quality to be looking out for. If you're looking to invest any training in your leaders, my recommendation, and the things that we often find people struggle with the most when they're new leaders, is how to give feedback. So that can quite often be constructive feedback, or having to give someone a good telling off, basically. New leaders can often find that really difficult. So that would definitely be something I'd be looking to work with. How to overcome their own limiting beliefs, that they're not good enough, that they're not the best leader, being able to give people the confidence that they can do and they can achieve. I know, as it says on the screen, it's a soft skill, but it will really help transform people into better leaders. And finally, state management. And state management is all about being able to handle yourself in those situations where you are probably naturally not comfortable. So when CQC turn up, or when you're being interviewed by local authority, the feedback we get is that this is quite often something new leaders will struggle with. So helping them with that, giving them tools to be better, confident leaders, it is going to really, really benefit you. If you are looking to spot any of these qualities in your own staff, through our research, we do have a benchmarked report, a very simple report. You can kind of see it on the screen. And this has been benchmarked against high performers in care. You can use it as part of your hiring process when you're interviewing staff. You can use it as part of your onboarding to help people understand that you understand them, and help them understand how to, if they have any development areas, and how they can fit in with the rest of the team. And you can use it with your appraisals and any development that you do with your team as well. So if you'd like to have a speak with me about using this report, or having a look at a selection of your staff, and we do always offer a little sample so we can bring it to life for you. So just get in touch afterwards. So to summarise then, and thank you for spending this time with me this morning, the Outstanding Manager research is available, and you will be supplied with a link to all of these that you can download. The Leadership Styles Questionnaire, give it a go, see how you come out. I'm sure you probably have an idea in your head, but really interesting to understand what style you're using the most, and whether you should be moving into a slightly different style if the scenario dictates. The Road to Outstanding podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify. There is a free app called Podbean. If you don't have an iPhone, then that Podbean app is really good for listening to the podcast. Or you can go old school and listen to it through your laptop. But download it, listen to it on your commute. The episodes are about 30 to 40 minutes long, so average commute time. And hopefully you'll find some things in there that are really useful. There's a great interview with Andrea Sutcliffe as well, who I was quite nervous to interview, but she was really, really great and shared some really interesting things that you might not know. And finally, if you'd like to sample the Judgement Index, then do let me know, just get in touch. So thank you very much. I am going to pass back to Rachel now. Feel free to tweet us. We do love a bit of Twitter. And if anybody happens to be at Health Plus Care in June, I will be speaking in the Business Theatre. So come and say hi, and don't be afraid to introduce yourself, and let me know what your leadership style is. I'd be really interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. That's brilliant. That's really useful content, and it's great to see some really key tips that you can action straight away. So I'm just going to take back the slides now. So that's great. Like Sophie said, the information afterwards will be sent to you directly. So the links to the questionnaires, to you know, the salary survey that we've discussed, the podcast, everything will be coming to you directly into your inbox, so look out for that. I'll get the team to share that with you straight after this webinar recording is available. So one thing that I would definitely suggest, if you are on LinkedIn, is to get on there and connect with Sophie, connect with myself. Like we both do share really useful social care specific content for managers and leaders, and also the Care Providers Knowledge Hub group. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, that is a group which is a protected space. We do monitor who is accepted into the group, so that we can make sure that the content that is put in there is relevant, it's rich, it's useful and helpful, and the main thing that we're trying to do is to add value and make sure that you don't have to go around searching on the internet and all these different places to find things. We're going to try and bring as much of the content to you, into your inbox and into the group as possible. So we automatically send out the recording straight after, and as soon as we've downloaded that and it's available. But if you do want a copy of the slides, do just let me know. As I mentioned previously, the feedback survey will also be coming out to you. That would be great feedback for myself and Sophie to help us sort of move forward with any future topics that you would want to hear about, and also the content that you found and how you found that today and how you can implement that into your organisation. As I stated, the Social Care Salary Survey 2018 will be sent to you, and the webinar recording. So thank you for spending this time with us today. It's been really useful. I know there's a lot of things that I'm going to implement straight away with the team. Definitely going to get the management team to take the questionnaire, and see how we can all move forward, and implement those strategies into the business, and hopefully improve all our management styles and the leaders within our businesses. So thank you for today.